At 35,000 feet, no one expected a 14-year-old girl with a battered anatomy textbook to be the reason a life was saved. When a pregnant woman collapsed mid-flight, it wasn't a doctor who stood up. It was Eliza, quiet, unnoticed, invisible, until that moment. She didn't act for attention. She acted because something deep in her said, "Do not look away." Hours later, when the billionaire whose wife she saved offered her anything she wanted, Eliza made a request so selfless, so specific, it brought the man to tears. Not because of what she asked, but because of what she didn't. The soft rumble of the plane was steady, a mechanical heartbeat against the silence in seat 34A. Eliza Moore sat cross-legged, a library book propped on her thighs. Human Anatomy, Structures and Functions. The title nearly rubbed off the cover. Its pages smelled faintly of glue and dust. Her thumb traced the illustration of the femur, lips moving without sound as she memorized Latin names. Her backpack was tucked neatly under the seat in front of her, the zipper frayed, one strap held with a safety pin. She was flying alone, Boston to Atlanta. The end of a summer gifted to the lucky few. Gifted, that is, by grades and grit. She had earned her place in a science immersion program with handwritten essays and test scores no one at her underfunded school had touched before. But now, with the program over, she was going home. Alone. Again. Eliza didn't mind. She was used to spaces where no one noticed her. Sometimes invisibility felt safer than being seen and questioned. A tray clinked nearby as a flight attendant passed, smiling brightly at passengers who didn't look up from their phones. Up in first class, laughter drifted over the curtain. Ice clinking in glasses, a low thrum of expensive comfort. Eliza took a bite of her sandwich, peanut butter and slightly crushed, and returned to her reading. She liked bones. They didn't lie. They didn't change depending on who was looking at them. Then it started. Soft, almost like someone dropped a bag. A thud. Then a voice, strained and rising. "Ma'am. Ma'am. Are you okay?" The curtain rustled. A commotion. A glass shattered. Eliza looked up. A woman was slumped in her seat in first class, her hands clenched around her belly. Her face was pale, lips parted like she was trying to say something but couldn't. A man next to her, tall, salt and pepper hair, tailored shirt, was calling out, "We need a doctor. Is there a doctor?" No one answered. The flight attendants froze. One had her hand on the phone, calling someone, maybe the captain. The others hovered, unsure. One of them said, "Ma'am, just try to breathe, okay? Just stay with us." But her voice was shaking. Someone called out, "Anybody, please." And then quieter, sharper. "Jesus, is no one going to help?" Eliza was already unbuckling. She wasn't fast, but her hands didn't shake. She closed the book, set it gently on the seat, and walked up the aisle. Voices dipped as she passed. A man in business class glanced at her, raised a brow. Someone laughed under their breath. "Is she serious?" She stopped in front of the woman, looked up at the tall man. Her husband, maybe. "I'm not a doctor," she said, "but I know what to check for." He looked at her, stunned. His mouth opened, then closed. One of the flight attendants stepped back. You know first aid?" "I was in a medical prep program," Eliza said. "I've done simulations. If she's going into shock or early labor, she needs to be stabilized." Stillness followed. Then, without waiting, Eliza knelt beside the woman. Her palms moved gently, carefully. checked pulse, felt for heat, asked for a pillow, directed one of the flight attendants to loosen the woman's belt, another to tilt her to her side. "She's dehydrated," Eliza said, her voice low but sure. "And her blood pressure's crashing. Can you get water?" "Slowly, not too much." The woman whimpered. Eliza whispered something to her. No one heard what. But the woman nodded. Her breath started to slow. The panic in the cabin didn't disappear, but it paused, held by this girl with braids down her back and quiet eyes. Time passed, 20 minutes, maybe 30. Eliza stayed close, monitoring, instructing, her hands never trembling. Eventually, color returned to the woman's cheeks. The tension in the man's jaw began to loosen. When the plane touched down in Atlanta, paramedics were already waiting. They swept in fast, but not before the tall man turned to Eliza. He looked at her like he hadn't really seen her until now. "Wait," he said. "Wait. What's your name?" "Eliza." "Eliza what?" "Eliza Moore." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Thank you," he whispered. You might have saved them both." Later, in the terminal, after the crowd had thinned and the lights felt too bright, Eliza sat quietly, waiting for her aunt. Her book was back in her lap. She wasn't reading. He found her again, same tailored coat. This time, no panic, just something fragile behind his eyes. He sat beside her without asking. "My name's Jonathan Rivers," he said. "My wife's name is Claire, and you're not just a kid. What you did, it was... God, I can't even say." Eliza nodded once. He pulled a checkbook from his jacket. "Look, I don't care what anyone says. That kind of courage, it deserves something real. Say the number. I'll write it right now." She looked at the check, then at him. "I don't want money." He blinked. "What?" "I don't want money," she repeated. "But I do want something." He hesitated. "Anything." "There's a school," she said slowly, "in South Atlanta. No labs, no microscopes. My biology teacher uses paper diagrams because we don't have models. Build us a lab. Not for me. For the kids coming next." He stared at her. Something in his face changed, the armor slipping. "You're serious?" Eliza didn't smile. "We don't even have a skeleton. Not a single one." He pressed a hand to his mouth, looked down. When he looked back up, his eyes were wet. "You could have asked for a scholarship, a car, anything, and you..." "I'm not the only one who wants to learn," she said. "Just maybe the only one you saw today." He didn't answer. He just nodded, slowly, like something inside him had been rearranged. That night, the story began to spread. Headlines mentioned a mid-flight emergency, a tech CEO's pregnant wife. But Eliza's name was barely there, just a passing mention. The spotlight slid, as it often did, toward money and influence. She went home quietly. No interviews, no press. Her classmates clapped when she returned, but Eliza blushed and buried herself back in books. It wasn't for show. 4 weeks later, a truck rolled up outside her school. Workers in hard hats stepped out. Supplies were unloaded. Steel beams, glass panels. A sign was hammered into the lawn. Eliza Moore Science Center, built by the Jonathan Rivers Foundation. Because she asked. No one said a word for a moment. Then one teacher began to cry. Another hugged Eliza without asking. Kids swarmed the fence, shouting her name. He came too. Jonathan Rivers. He didn't wear a suit this time. He stood in the sun with his hands in his pockets, staring up at the building as if it were something sacred. When he spoke, his voice caught. She could have asked for the world, he said. Instead, she opened it for someone else. Journalists swarmed him. Eliza stepped back, unnoticed again, the way she liked it. But the plaque at the gate bore her words, etched into steel. You don't have to be important to do something important. And the man who once built empires now watched teenagers file into a lab he never would have thought to build. If a girl with a library book hadn't looked him in the eye and asked for more than herself. At 7:12 a.m., the construction dust still hung low over the south lawn of Carver High School, catching in the morning light like fine chalk. The building stood quiet, clean-lined and new, glass panels gleaming behind yellow tape. Students gathered, hushed, some still in backpacks they'd had since 6th grade, staring at the sign freshly bolted near the entrance. Eliza Moore. Science Center. Letters cut in steel, sharp against the brick. Eliza stood to the side, not quite in the circle, her hands tucked deep into her jacket sleeves. Someone had drawn her face in chalk on the walkway. She didn't like it. Too big, too bold. It didn't feel like her. She kicked at a corner of the line with her toe and kept her head down. Teachers moved slowly around her, glancing over, not saying much. Mr. Green, her biology teacher, had circles under his eyes and the same tie he wore when the principal retired. He stopped near her but didn't touch her shoulder. Just looked at the center, exhaled, then looked away. Then, the cars started arriving. Journalists, Foundation people in suits. A man in a brown polo shirt tried to hand her a lanyard with a name badge. She shook her head. A long, black car rolled up the driveway like it didn't belong in this part of town. Out stepped Jonathan Rivers, again without a coat, again walking like he wasn't used to standing still. His assistant trailed behind, murmuring something about a speech. He didn't listen. He saw Eliza and walked straight toward her. I didn't think you'd come, he said, pausing like the sentence could have gone another way. I go here, she said, quiet. He gave a crooked smile. Yeah, right. They stood in silence. The crowd began to form behind them. A podium was rolled into place. Someone tested a mic. Eliza shifted her weight. You want to say something? He asked. She shook her head. Even just a thank you? She looked at him. I already said what I needed. He didn't push. Instead, he walked up to the microphone, cleared his throat once, then again. Most buildings like this, he said, are built because someone gave money. A murmur. This one exists because a 14-year-old girl told me the truth, and I listened. He looked over his shoulder. Eliza kept her eyes on her shoes. She didn't ask for a reward. She didn't ask for college. She didn't even want to be noticed. He swallowed. She just wanted other kids to have what she didn't. A pause stretched long. I thought I was giving a gift. Turns out I received one. He stepped down. No ribbon cutting, no fanfare, just soft applause and the sound of a bird landing on the edge of the new roof. Inside, the science center smelled of fresh paint and unopened boxes. Glass cases held models of human organs. A real lab skeleton stood in the corner, arms slightly askew, as if waving. Students filed in, whispering. One ran his hand across a table like it might disappear. Another opened a cabinet, gasping at the neat rows of beakers and tools. Eliza walked behind them, fingers trailing along the wall. In the back room, under soft lighting, stood a single photo in a simple black frame. She didn't know it was there. It showed her on the plane, book in lap, eyes down, blurry, taken from behind. Beside it, etched in glass. One action can save a life. One voice can change a generation. Mr. Green found her staring at it. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "You look like you want to disappear." "I always do," she said. He smiled faintly. "You're allowed to be proud, you know." "I didn't do it for that." "I know." He paused. "That's why it matters." The weeks passed, then months. The center became not just a building, but a reason. Students stayed late. Clubs formed. One boy started a YouTube channel where he dissected frog models. Another wrote an essay about molecular structures that made it to regionals. The school started placing in science competitions for the first time in its history. And Eliza. She went to class, took notes, said little, walked the same streets to school, wore the same hoodie, carried the same stitched-up backpack. But now, when she raised her hand, people looked up. Teachers paused. Students stopped chewing gum and listened. Once, in the lunch line, a younger girl tapped her shoulder. "Are you the one from the plane?" Eliza blinked. "What?" "The one who saved the lady's baby." Eliza hesitated. "Yeah." The girl nodded. "That's cool." She didn't say anything else, just smiled, then walked off with a carton of milk. Eliza sat alone at her usual table, but for the first time, she didn't feel invisible, just quiet. And maybe that was different. A few weeks later, a letter came. Cream envelope. Heavy. She knew before she opened it. Harvard's logo on the front. The pre-college track in medicine. Full ride. Handwritten note at the bottom. "We heard about your work. We'd be honored to have you." She read it once. Then again. Then folded it and placed it in her drawer. She had finals first. Priorities. Jonathan called a week later. She didn't pick up the first time. He called again. "Eliza." His voice came through, a little out of breath. I wanted to run something by you." She sat on the porch, phone to her ear, the late sun catching the edge of the step. "I'm starting something," he said. "A program. Labs in underfunded schools. Inspired by, well, you. But I don't want to just put my name on things. I want to do it right." She didn't answer. "I thought maybe you'd help me shape it," he added. "Tell me what matters. What's missing? Be honest." "Okay," she said. "You'll think about it." "No," she said. "I'll help." He let out a breath. "Good, because I don't trust anyone else to get it." She could hear him smiling through the phone. "You know," he said softer, "I thought I gave you a chance, but I think it was the other way around." She didn't say anything. In the months that followed, the program took shape. Not glossy, not loud, but deliberate. Labs started appearing in schools like hers, quiet places with loud potential. On the Foundation's website, under advisors, her name appeared, small at the bottom. But it was there. The story of the flight still came up sometimes, but people stopped asking what she said to the billionaire. They started asking what she was doing next. Eliza always gave the same answer. Studying. On a rainy Tuesday, she sat in the science center with a sixth grader who couldn't quite remember the chambers of the heart. "It's like a house," she said, drawing on a napkin. 4 rooms. Blood goes in one, gets cleaned, goes out the other. He looked up. You a doctor? She smiled. Not yet. But you're gonna be. I think so. The boy nodded, serious. Cool. She handed him the napkin. Outside, thunder rolled low. In the hallway, the bones of the lab skeleton clinked softly as the door opened and closed behind them. The storm came at night, not a violent one, just enough wind to rattle the chain-link fences and press leaves against windows like wet hands. In the darkened science center, the emergency lights cast long shadows across the lab tables. A forgotten microscope blinked in standby. Somewhere, a leaky gutter tapped a slow, steady rhythm on the concrete. Eliza was still there. She liked the quiet after hours. No voices, no clatter of chairs, no one asking for quotes or photos or plans. Just the steady hum of electricity and her own breath, counted out between lines in her textbook. Her sneakers were off, tucked under the desk. A cup of vending machine coffee sat beside her notes, cooling fast. She had an exam in the morning, physics. But her mind kept circling. Earlier that day, she'd sat through a meeting with the Foundation's design team. They wanted to build 3 more centers, one in New Orleans, another in Detroit, a third in rural Mississippi. They asked her questions, nodded earnestly when she spoke, scribbled notes she didn't believe they'd read again. But Jonathan had looked at her differently. Quiet, watchful. You okay? He'd asked after the meeting, catching her alone in the stairwell. She didn't answer right away. Then, I'm tired. He nodded slowly. It's a lot. She looked at him. I didn't ask for this. No, he said. You asked for better. Now, as the rain deepened, she turned back to her book. Then, voices, footsteps in the hall. The door opened. Mr. Green stuck his head in. Thought I'd find you here. She sat up straighter. Forgot the time. You always forget the time. He came in, set a paper bag on the counter. Sandwich, peanut butter. Don't argue. She smiled a little, took it. Thanks. They ate in silence, just the two of them, and the sound of rain. After a while, he spoke. You heard about Marcus. Eliza looked up. No. He got into the summer program, the one in Boston. Her eyes widened. He applied. You helped him with the essay. Don't act surprised. A small laugh escaped her. He said he didn't have a shot. Funny thing, Green said. You make people believe in impossible things, and then act shocked when they work out. She looked down, tore a corner off the sandwich. Maybe he was always meant for it. Maybe. He leaned back, but someone gave him the map. She didn't answer, just nodded. A quiet swell of something, not pride, not quite, but close. Later that week, a boy named Terry Washington, 9th grade, stepped into the science center holding a project made of duct tape and cardboard. It's a heart, he said. Okay, Eliza said, looking over it. I mean, not a real heart, but it pumps. She watched as he pressed a rubber bulb, making the valves open and close, forcing red-dyed water through clear tubing. It's messy, he said, but it works. It's brilliant, she said. You should enter it. His eyes narrowed. Why? Because it shows how you think. He stared at her for a second. They let kids like me win. They do now. He didn't smile. Not yet. But she saw it. Something shifting in his shoulders. The way he stood taller as he walked out. 2 weeks later, Terry won second place at the state fair. He came back with a ribbon and eyes shining like glass. Eliza pinned it to the bulletin board herself. The Science Center kept growing, not in size, but in pull. Students came in early, stayed late. Teachers began weaving labs into everyday lessons. Local colleges took notice. Journalists stopped by, wrote cautious articles about grassroots impact and student-led revolutions. But the most surprising thing happened quietly. One afternoon, a woman walked in, pregnant, older, in a faded green dress. Her eyes scanned the walls until they found Eliza, who was demonstrating cell structures to a group of middle schoolers. The woman waited, patient, hands folded over her belly. When Eliza finally noticed her, she froze. Claire Rivers. She hadn't seen her since that flight. Claire smiled. "You don't remember my voice, do you?" "I do," Eliza said softly. They stepped into the office. Claire sat slowly, one hand resting where her son had once kicked, now a 5-month-old somewhere in a safe, warm house. "I wanted to see the place," she said. "The one you asked for." Eliza offered a nod. "I didn't get a chance to say thank you," Claire said. "Not properly." "You don't have to." "I do." Claire's voice was firm. "I remember what it felt like, to not know if I'd see my baby, or his father. To see you, this kid, calm, serious, telling grown people what to do. You weren't just brave, you were right." Eliza sat back. "You know what Jonathan said that night," Claire went on. "He said he met someone who reminded him what it means to be useful." Eliza looked away. "I'm just trying to help people think. That's how it starts." When Claire left, she paused at the photo on the wall. "I hope my son sees this place one day," she said, "so he knows who helped him get here before he was even born." Then she was gone. That night, Eliza walked home slower than usual. The summer heat hadn't lifted yet, and the pavement still radiated warmth. Kids played down the block, chalk drawings smeared under their feet. Someone played an old radio through an open window. Soul music, slow and soft. In her room, the envelope from Harvard still sat in her drawer. She took it out, read it again, then picked up her phone. "Mr. Rivers," she said when he answered. "Eliza, everything okay?" "I'll go," she said. A pause. Then, "You mean—" "To Harvard. I'll accept." She could almost hear him smile. "Good. But the program," she added, "the labs, they don't stop. You promise?" "I promise," he said, "but only if you promise something too." "What's that?" "Don't forget why you started." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. A year passed, then 2. The Science Center expanded again. More students, more projects. The Eliza effect, someone called it in a podcast. She hated that. But she didn't stop. One afternoon, she came back to Carver, just for a visit. She walked through the halls with her old backpack, now patched in 2 more places, though she didn't use it anymore. A younger student waved at her from across the room. Another whispered her name. In the corner of the lab, a kid was teaching a classmate how blood moved through the heart using the same napkin sketch she once drew. She didn't interrupt, just smiled. And in that moment, invisible or not, Eliza Moore became exactly who she was always meant to be. Not a savior, not a symbol, just someone who had once stood up and spoken when no one else did. And that, it turned out, was enough to change everything.